To all who will read, the main character wants to tell you about what is going on there. There is a place where children fall into eternal sleep every day, and there is a missing princess of the kingdom of Tyrion. Her name is Stella Tyrion, the first princess of the kingdom of Tyrion, revered by all, the Star of Tyrion. Now she does not exist, and the girl is only a star devoid of light, trapped in a terrible darkness, a star that has lost all its life force, perishing in the darkness. That place is scary, cold, wet, and bad. The young lady with tears in her eyes thinks that she has already completely forgotten how long she has been there. On her 10th birthday, when the girl was having fun and drinking wine with the maids before she was kidnapped. Since that time, the little girl is locked up, among children shaking with fear. In order not to lose the knowledge she had gained, the girl frantically taught her cellmates everything she knew. She wrote the alphabet on the floor, told tales she heard from the maids every night. Deep down, she believed that someday they would get out of there, but the end was coming. The protagonist realized that they could not get out because the red liquid was pouring out of her mouth and the girl could not stop coughing. She wondered if it was a disease or an infection. The young lady asked the children not to get close, but they were worried about her and kept sticking. After they fell asleep, the protagonist started peeing by the light that barely penetrated there. She realized that this writing was probably her will. The princess hugs the little girl and realizes that she herself does not have long to live. She can't sleep, and the knights at the entrance to the cage say that tomorrow everything will end. The protagonist hugs the girl harder and wonders if the knights want to finish them off. The girl doesn't even remember the faces and voices of her father and mother, and wonders if someone will come and find her. Stella Tyrion. She thinks that if they had, she wouldn't be here then. The girl hugs the young lady harder and calls her princess, and she cannot hold back her tears, for she did not wish for such an end and wanted to sink into eternal sleep in love and affection. From everyone, in any case. She wants to live. Pondering, Stella Tyrion fell asleep soundly in a cave full of intoxicating aroma. In the morning, the protagonist is already lying breathless. A stranger comes in, takes her in his arms, and walks out of the cage. The boy heads to the cauldron and dips the girl into it. Where children come in, they are kicked with their feet and chased away. The stranger, on the other hand, cuts his hand and adds the red liquid to the cauldron. He claims that he is sacrificing the purest of all, thanks to the holy blood and flesh. He orders her to be reborn into the most evil creature and destroy the whole world. The protagonist wakes up and wonders what that horrible smell is. She hears screams and tells them not to put the children into eternal sleep, but then the realization comes to her that she is not in a cage. Stella, not realizing what this place is or why she's there, suddenly an earthquake starts and then stops. The young lady says she doesn't want to end up like this. On the verge of death, there is an overwhelming desire to live, so she kicks the walls of this space. Abrasions appear on her hands and feet, and her fingers are very sore. But she decides not to give up and realizes that she needs to squeeze her hands and feet, and after that, kick as hard as possible so that she doesn't even feel the pain. Stella does it with all her might, and finally she succeeds. The girl sees the light and decides that now it's time to go get the kids. She asks not to intimidate the child, but when she looks at her hands, she sees that she is a child herself. There are scientists standing around her in complete shock. One of them suggests to write down everything in detail first. Hurry up and call the professor. The little girl does not understand what they are talking about and what they have done to her, but she cannot even speak normally because she is still very young. The girl thinks how scared she is, but one of the scientists comes up to her and says that there is nothing to be afraid of. Another woman says that it is true because she has just hatched from an egg and they will not touch her. The little girl doesn't understand what they are talking about, but when she turns around, she sees the shell. The girl still remembers how her life was cut short. Imprisoned in the cramped darkness, she passed out from the stupefying smell, but who she was and why she found herself trapped in that place, the girl can't remember. She realizes that she was definitely in an adult body and wonders if it could be a rebirth. The scientists, on the other hand, are enthralled with the little girl. One of them asks if the girl can talk, and the other claims she definitely heard the girl say, "bust." The blonde woman puts on her glasses, and Stella thinks it's as if she's turned on study mode. The woman pokes the protagonist's cheek. The little girl just says, "ague." She looks at the scientists and with a determined look tries to say something. She knows how to talk, but her tongues don't obey her. The scientists don't understand something she is trying to tell them, and they smile at the girl. The young lady thinks what strange people there are. The blonde looks at the little girl and says that the fact that a human child hatched from an egg is amazing, but she doesn't think that the girl is any different from ordinary people. The woman pulls that one to her cheek and smiles, for Stella's skin is soft and tender. One man asks the professor if he can touch too, then the other scientists almost beat him up and claim they want to. Everyone ends up touching the main character's cheeks, except that guy. A girl with red hair asks the professor if the Pope's advice should be informed, but the woman claims that she shouldn't, suggesting that they keep it a secret for now, because everyone in the Vatican is busy right now, and they have plenty of other things to do. The blonde asks if everyone can keep it a secret, and the other scientists tell her not to hesitate. Stella realizes that this woman is in charge, but she can't understand where she is. So she tries to ask her elders a question, but her tongue fails her again, and she says, "ague." Everyone just revels in this, and the girl begins to thrash around in rage because she cannot say anything. The little girl in her thoughts asks them to stop calling her cute, but one of the scientists says that the girl's cuteness can make you faint. The professor says the child hatched from an egg found in the demon ruins, but Stella doesn't know what she's talking about. She's sure she's trapped in a ball of darkness, and when she hears the screams of the children, she immediately starts punching the wall of that ball in an attempt to get out. The ball was small for her. The little girl felt like a 4-year-old child. The blonde decides to try something and pulls out a stick from her pocket. She asks the little girl to open her mouth. The girl with red hair asks the professor if a toddler at that age shouldn't be able to talk, and the blonde states that if you compare her to Kyle, she should be able to talk. After the professor checks the girl's mouth, she claims that the structure of the mouth is all fine, and the little girl probably hasn't learned to talk yet. The girl with red hair suggests that the young lady may not know the Rhodese language. The protagonist, on the other hand, understands it. She waves her hands and tries to speak, but one of the scientists asks if the girl can represent herself as a chick. But Stella, almost simultaneously with another scientist, thinks that the one is an idiot. Then the girl with red hair suggests asking the little girl where she came from after she learns to speak. The professor sighs and says, "okay." She states that outwardly, the girl looks like a normal child, but she can tell where she came from. The blonde offers to bathe, feed, change, and educate this little girl. All the other scientists agree. After all these actions, the protagonist thinks how she wants to sleep. She tries to remember if she always wanted to sleep so much after eating. The professor says that he will take care of the girl. Stella, on the other hand, wants to realize what she is doing, but her eyes keep closing. The blonde asks if the little girl wants to know her name. The protagonist is interested in this and says me. The woman claims she's good at it and offers to try again. She calls the little girl's name is Letitia. The girl tries to repeat it, but all she gets out is the word Etitia. The blonde says it's very cute and claims that it's still hard for her to talk since her tongue isn't used to it, and Kyle can't pronounce the name either. She wonders if the blonde is already a mom, but the blonde says that the name Letitia means special child and asks if she likes it. The main character only smiles then, and the blonde woman can't contain her smile. When this woman smiles, the young lady gets warm at heart. The professor claims that her name is Bess Ardan. The protagonist repeats the name in her head once more, the little girl reborn in the body of a child, remembering her end, the screams of the children, the earthquake, and the foul odor. It was as if someone was controlling her body. In the end, she felt she was all alone, but when Bess gave her a name, the feeling of loneliness slowly began to go away. Now, the baby understands what it means to be loved, and it makes tears roll down her cheeks. The woman excitedly asks why Letitia is crying. The girl herself doesn't know why. Just seeing Bess's face makes her think of those she can't even remember. The blonde hugs the little girl and says that everything is fine and she shouldn't cry. The protagonist thought it was all just a beautiful dream. The Academy of Ancient Relics belongs to the Pope's Council. Bess said they would be there all the next few days. She introduced the little girl to the students of the private institution who do things the girls don't understand. And also, they're making the same sounds of fatigue and suddenly touching the little girl's cheeks, and also with such a satisfied expression on their faces. And if there was time, the professor would take her on her lap and read her a book. She would say every word to her, and the little girl would try to repeat it. The protagonist realizes that today she is doing better than yesterday. One of the scientists hugs her and smiles happily. The young lady realizes that she has hatched from an egg and thinks that it is not strange and scary. People there are really some weirdos because they treat her like an ordinary child. The little girl makes a serious face and thinks that she herself is strange, and the scientists around are surprised by such a serious face. The professor states that Letitia seems to really like learning, not like Kyle. One of the scientists says that this is true because usually children at that age like to play. The blonde says that Kyle does, nevertheless. One of the scientists compliments the speech and says that Mr. Dimitri is very gifted and asks if the woman expected Kyle to be that way too. But Bess says she didn't, as Dimitri, on the other hand, is overly enthusiastic about work. Bess often talks about her sons. The first is Dimitri, not outgoing but quite gifted. The next is Kyle. He is about the same age as the baby but is rude and mean. And the youngest, he was born recently and not much has been heard of him yet. The son is kind, smart, and beautiful, like his mom Bess. The little girl is jealous of him. She looks at the blonde woman and sees her laughing, but the girl looks away. The woman asks what's wrong with Letitia and if she wants to study. The protagonist says she's quiet, and Bess strokes her head, but the little girl turns her head around and turns back to the girl holding her. The blonde, however, starts tickling the baby and with a smile on her face asks what's the matter, and the protagonist cries out, "Don't." Letitia thinks that if the professor's sons saw their mother talking to the little girl, who would bite all their elbows. The girl puts her hand over Bess's mouth, and she thinks how lovely those naughty hands are. All the scientists shout in unison that Letitia is very nice. The young lady doesn't look very happy, so Bess tells the guys to stop. She approaches the main character and takes her in her arms. The baby falls asleep as soon as the woman takes her in her arms. The professor tells everyone to get away from Letitia and go about their business. The scientists are run over by a truck. The blonde woman walks away with the baby in her arms. One of the scientists claims to be completely satisfied because she was able to support the young lady. The woman leaves the room with the baby, stating that they all did well. Afterward, she and Letitia walk through the garden. Bess asks if the baby wants her to lull her to sleep, but she claims she doesn't. When the professor asks what's wrong and if the girl is sleepy, she also wonders if something is wrong. The little girl snuggles up to the woman and thinks she likes Bess and warm hands. She ponders if it might feel just like her mom, but the babe doesn't remember her. The young lady wishes Bess was her mom. The protagonist looks the blonde straight in the eyes and calls that one Mamya. The professor asks if the little girl thinks she is her mother. When the girl answers yes, the woman with a bright smile on her face asks if then. Letty is her daughter, and the little girl claims that she is, but she was serious. The protagonist wants her to have a family as friendly as she is. Bess notices the young lady crying and asks what's wrong and if it hurts anywhere. She dulls her forehead to the little girl and states that she doesn't seem to have a cold. But the protagonist's heart hurts, not her body. She calms herself down, smiles, and claims that she is not sick. After all this, the young lady falls asleep, and Bess thinks that it is a child about whom she knows nothing. The woman ponders whether the girl is the same as everyone else. But an ordinary child cannot have such a look. It appears in those who have experienced loneliness and fear. The blonde holds the little girl in her arms and thinks she wants to find out more about her. After that, the professor puts the girl in bed. She puts her hand to her face, and the little girl grabs her finger and asks not to go, but to stay. Bess, in response to this, only sighs and stays with the little girl. The next day, the students are noshing around the room. The protagonist realizes that you are all taken care of. Usually they clean up some stuff and are forever touching her cheeks, but today, everything is shiny with cleanliness. Someone's calling for Letitia. It's one of the students. He's holding a little dress and offers the little girl to put it on. The protagonist looks at her dress and sees dirty marks on it. She thinks that only in the morning she changed clothes and was clean. The girl does not understand when only had time to get dirty. Then she remembers eating and wiping herself on her clothes. She realizes that everything is more like a child. Georgie and Rose took the dirty clothes and washed them until they were clean. Previously, after washing, the baby's hair was dried and brushed or just tied back, but today they did things in a special way. The protagonist doesn't understand why. Letitia looks in the mirror and wonders if it's really her. The little girl ponders if something is being celebrated today. The scientist tells Letitia that she looks beautiful there. The girl herself is lifted by this reflection. She wants to hear from Bess that she is nice, so she calls out to the woman, but the scientist claims that the professor will be here soon, and the little girl gets upset. The guys realize that she's cute, but so snippy, and decide to fix it. They get the little girl's attention by telling her to look, and when Letitia turns around, they hand her a teddy bear that also moves. The girl asks if the little girl is so interested that she has forgotten about the professor, but the protagonist says that she is not. She continues to play with the teddy bear, and Letitia becomes more and more interested in how it works. The plush toy hits the door and falls. The protagonist walks over to the teddy bear and tries to pick it up. But suddenly someone opens the door, and the young lady is on the floor with the bear. The entrants are Bess and some other stranger. The girl runs up to the woman in tears, and she asks if the little girl is hurt badly. Letitia says she's in pain. She looks at the blonde and realizes that she is very beautiful today. The stranger, however, turns to them and asks what Letitia is. The protagonist does not understand what he is talking about, but the guy looks at her with a penetrating look that makes the little girl hiccup. The scientists are very excited when he arrives. This scary man seems familiar. The girl remembers the men in black clothes who kept her and her children locked up in her past life. Letitia thinks the man reminds her of them for some reason. The brunette points to the baby girl and asks Bess what it is. The blonde asks if the little girl is really cute. When the baby looks at Bess's husband, she gets a little scared and thinks that he is like a deity, and if you stab him, he won't even bat an eyebrow. The man points to the baby and asks what it is. The blonde claims that it is not what, but who, because she is a child. The brunette claims that the girl looks a lot like Bess, asks if it is an illegitimate child. All the scientists are shocked by such a guess, and the protagonist smirks. The woman tells him not to joke like that, and the young lady realizes that they do have the same hair color. It seems that the stranger is an Archduke. The girl thinks isn't that the second title after king. The little girl looks menacingly at Cassius. She is sure that the professor married out of convenience, for what woman would fall in love with a guy with such a look? The brunette notices the girl looking at him and directs his gaze to her, and Letitia quickly turns around and runs to Bess. The blonde pushes her husband away a little and tells him not to look that way because the little girl is scared. The man sighs and asks why there is a baby in the lab. One of the scientists starts talking about the demon ruins, but the girl standing next to him steps on the guy's foot, and he realizes that he only almost let it slip. So he claims it's his cousin. Cassius asks what kind of idiot brought his little sister into the lab, and the brown-haired man apologizes to the Archduke. The brunette states that ancient relics are closely associated with demons, and bringing a child into a room full of magical artifacts is a bit odd. The man asks if the little girl is really just a child. All he hears in response is yes. Cassius then approaches the scientist and asks if he is sure, but the guy gasps in excitement. The man asks what his answer is, but Bess interrupts their conversation and states that she has news of a relic that the king was previously interested in. The Archduke. You ask what the relic is. The woman claims he was interested in it as well. Ancient books from demonic ruins and it. The blonde suggests that her husband stop pestering the students and come with her, but he solo decides to. Bess then puts Letty in Gregory's hands and tells him to take care of her, whereupon she leaves with the Archduke. As the door closes, everyone sighs and the brown-haired man is ready to faint. One of the scientists asks if the little girl is all right, and the prince shrieks that they should worry about him, for he is the one who is most frightened there. The girl, looking in the direction where the man who just came out was standing, remembers her past. The cold, dark basement and the crying of children. The little girl claims she is scared. One of the scientists strokes her head and asks if she is scared too. The girl claims that everyone here is afraid of the Archduke. The only exception is the professor. One of the scholars asks if Bess isn't wonderful, because she didn't even flinch once in front of him. The man who is holding Letitia on his lap says that this is true, for not for nothing was he nicknamed the Terror in the Night. One of the scholars asks if he is talking about Archduke Ardan. Gregory asks if she knows of this man and begins his story. Cassius Ardan is the great Archduke of the Empire of Lotus. In his 30th year, he has already managed to unite 5 countries. It is said that he did not get his status only because of the king's favor. From his first battle at the age of 16 to his last battle at the age of 30, all battles ended in victory for Lotus. A man feared not only by the defeated, but also by his own people. Cassius was nicknamed the God of Doom. He was praised and feared at the same time. Gregory asks if the girl knows that the marriage between these two had more to do with the king. The girl claims that in any case, he didn't hurt anyone from the Holy Commission and the Academy. The protagonist does not understand then what the king wanted to show with this wedding, and whether it could be that the relationship between them by the Holy Commission is strong. She ponders how it is possible to marry such a terrible man and worries about Bess. The girl is already pondering if he's torturing her now. But one of the scholars pokes her in the nose and says that she should not worry because she is sure that the Archduke has never once raised his hand against the professor. The other scholar is shocked and asks how he can be so sure because that man is the Archduke of Ardan. But for this, he only gets a smack on the head, and the girl tells the little girl not to listen to him and offers to leave the cowardly Gregory and go drink hot chocolate. Letitia realizes that, as I promised Rose, the man won't bully her. The girl claims that Gregory is so pathetic for a senior scientist, but when he's doing research, it's like he's a different person. Rose claims that, in truth, the professor is Gregory's first love. The protagonist is shocked by this, and the girl laughs and says just to look at Letty's face. The girl, on the other hand, isn't really amused. Rose asks why Letty can't believe that the professor liked Gregory. The girl says that it turns out that the guy loves her with all his heart. She squeezes Letitia's cheeks and says that in moments like this, it's clear that the baby really does understand everything. Rose says that the professor is too lofty for Gregory and asks if it's impossible to give up after 10 years, especially since she's married. The girl with a blush on her cheek states that he'd rather look at the person next to him. The protagonist realizes what she means, and Rose is even more embarrassed and realizes what she just said. She puts her finger to her mouth and says that this will be their secret. The protagonist agrees, and the girl claims that the baby really does understand everything and is a special child. Letitia notices something amiss. This voice seems familiar to her, and the girl thinks that it is quite strange because she feels a sinister energy there, and Bess is also there. The main character opens the door and cries out the blonde's name. She sees Cassius standing there with a knife and Bess's wounded arm. The woman asks why the girl is here and if she came alone. But all the young lady thinks about is whether the man touched Bess. The little girl realizes that this is a horrible, scary man, and she must protect the woman. The brunette asks why it's here again, but the professor claims it's her, Letitia. Babe, however, runs with all her legs and bites the man's leg. The same man lifts his leg and asks if it is a dog and not a baby. Rose runs into the room and cries out the baby's name, but when she sees the girl biting the Archduke, she is horrified and wonders what happened. The brunette only throws the protagonist off her feet. Bess runs up to the young lady and asks if she's okay. Letitia sees that the woman's hand is so badly hurt. The little girl pokes her finger at Cassius and cries out that he's bad, black clothes and a cave. The blonde doesn't understand what this set of words are and wonders if they are all insults. The Archduke wonders if it's meant to be insulting and looks straight into the protagonist's eyes. The little girl, on the other hand, thinks about how annoyed she is by this vile face. She decides she has a duty to protect Bess before the man hurts her again. But, for some reason, the girl is getting so hot. She thinks about hitting one more time, but her body doesn't listen at all, and the little girl faints. Luckily, Bess manages to catch her. Rose puts her hand on Letitia's forehead and claims she has a fever. The blonde asks the scientist to take the baby to a doctor and claims that she will be there soon. Rose agrees. The protagonist has no strength at all. She does not understand what is wrong, and Bess looks worried. Letitia looks at the Archduke and asks what he is talking about with the blonde. She suggests in her mind that he say it loudly. The girl wonders why he is looking at her like that. She shows her fist to him with her last strength, and in her mind she says that next time he will not leave. After they leave, Cassius rewraps his wife's wound and says that she is so clumsy. Bess says that it would be nice if the brunette would show that side of himself and not be shy, but he only asks what else is shy. The blonde claims that her students tremble at the sight of the Archduke and asks him to be friendlier to others. Cassius says that for starters, he's only nice to his wife. The woman says that there are rumors that they married for convenience and that relations between them are bad. But the brunette hugs his wife and says that he doesn't care about the rumors. It's enough for him that the two of them know how false those rumors are. Bess says that people think her husband is raising his hand against her. The woman wonders if things would get easier if she said that the guy is not a bad person. Cassius hugs his wife harder and says that he doesn't care about other people's opinions. The blonde says that it seems that Letitia thought he was the one who hurt her. The Archduke asks if he looks intimidating, and Bess shies away from his embrace, remembering that she has to go to the baby. Brunette says that his wife needs to heal herself first and tells her to ask the doctor to examine her arm, but the woman asks if he will go with her. Brunette says he needs to go to the royal palace. He bends over to his wife and asks when she's going back to the mansion. Bess replies that the academy is on vacation starting next week, and the restoration and search for important relics is almost complete, so it will most likely be next week. The woman says goodbye to her husband and says she will go alone then. She states that Cassius still has a lot of work to do as well, and tells him to tell the children when he returns that she loves them. The Archduke grabs his wife's hand and claims he wants to make sure of something. After a final long silence, he asks that the girl is not her apprentice's cousin after all. Bess looks at the brunette and then can't hold back a laugh. She asks if Cassius really thinks the little girl is her child. The man remembers the girl and states that she has magic and fainted because she couldn't handle it. He says that even if his wife takes her to the doctors, they won't say anything. The blonde realizes that just as she thought her beloved husband noticed Letitia's magic, but the man is a close confidant of the king. The Archduke, on the other hand, approaches his wife and says that His Majesty is very concerned about those meteorites in the ruins that the scientists found. Oh, the girl has the same blonde hair. Bess turns away from her husband a bit and says that it's been 50 years since the fall of Tyrion, and there are a lot of blondes now. The brunette says that even though the country is destroyed, the prophecy won't go away. That's what the king and the blondes think. But Bess doesn't let him finish and cries out her husband's name. The kingdom of Rhodes came into being during the fall of Tyrion, and 50 years ago there lived a powerful seer. She claimed that before she fell into eternal sleep, she would tell the future of the kingdom. That and the seer was Rosalind, the last princess of Tyrion. The entire royal family was plunged into eternal sleep, and she was left alone. This princess later becomes Bess and is the last blood relative of Tyrion with blonde hair. The woman apologizes for yelling. The brunette asks if Bess knows what is bothering him. The egg was found at the site of a meteorite fall, and the girl with blonde hair that hatched from the egg seems strange to the Archduke. He realizes he has a duty to watch over her. The blonde says she knows of her husband's concerns, but offers to talk about it when she returns to the mansion, but until then asks Cassius not to tell the king about Letitia. The Archduke kisses his wife on the forehead and says that plans have changed, and he wants to check on the baby first before going to the imperial palace. The little girl is lying in bed. She remembers that Bess's hand was hurt. She bit that man's leg. The girl was overwhelmed with anger, and what happened after that she doesn't remember. The little girl opens her eyes and sees Rose, Bess, and her husband in front of her. The blonde walks up to her and asks if she's okay. Fly, she offers to check to see if the fever has broken. The protagonist looks at the woman's hand. She takes her small hands in hers, blows on it, and says, "Let her hand not hurt." The blonde woman thanks Fly and claims that all the pain is gone. The young lady, on the other hand, has her mood worsened by the uncle sitting across from her. They meet a glance, and the protagonist shows him her tongue. A nurse enters the room and tells the professor that the examination results are ready. Bess rises and leaves the room with her. Silence hangs in the room, but someone interrupts it and enters the room. Letitia thinks it's Bess who has finally returned, but it's just a girl with green hair. She asks Rose where the report is, because it has to be handed in today. The protagonist has a bad feeling. Rose runs out of the room. She asks His Excellency to look after the baby. Now there is only the little girl and the Archduke in this room. The young lady is already cursing to herself in her thoughts. The brunette, however, rises from his seat and heads to the chair that is closer to the bed. He sits on it and folds his arms. The man asks why the babe is looking so dumbfounded, and the lady replies in thought that sitting next to him is uncomfortable, but claims it's nothing of the sort. Cassius says that they've met each other's gazes so many times, and Letitia replies that it's not like that. The man notices that the girl talks better than Kyle, but the pronunciation is lame. The protagonist wants to ask him, isn't that good for someone who hatched from an egg a week ago, and Bess praises her every day, but she can't say it. Think how infuriating that uncle is. The man asks where the girl's parents are, and the girl replies that they are not there. The Archduke adds that the little girl has magic and asks if she can control it. Letitia is shocked at this. In her thoughts, she asks what magic and how she can have such a thing. Cassius sighs and tells the girl to stop looking at him like that, because he didn't hurt Bess. He claims that he never even thought of such a thing once. The young lady can't believe it and asks then why Bess was hurt. The man says that it is a marvelous woman he manages to somehow fall, or, if she picks up something dangerous in her hands, is bound to hurt herself. She is also inherently wrong. The little girl wonders if the blonde is really like that, but she doesn't think the Archduke would lie about it in front of a child like her. The protagonist realizes that she has no reason to hate him and needs to apologize. The girl says she's worried. She claims it's all a misunderstanding. Cassius smiles and asks if she knows that word too. The little girl only tilts her head, and in the meantime, a feather falls on her hair. The Archduke tries to remove it and holds out his hand. The young lady immediately remembers the man in black. She is shaking with fear, but the Archduke tells her not to be afraid and asks if he frightens the little girl. Letitia says that it's not like that. She's just very worried. The little girl apologizes to Cassius, but he didn't hear her. Bess enters the room and says she's back. The main character cheerfully cries out the blonde's name, and the latter lifts her up in her arms and smiles sincerely too. Afterward, the three of them sit on the bed. Letitia drinks cocoa as she looks at her uncle's face, who realizes he has a very different one at the sight of Bess. The blonde girl seems happy as well. The young lady realizes that they like each other, but she gets sad for some reason. Although she is living a good life now, because the students Gregory and Rose take care of her, because they are like family to her, but the little girl still wishes she had a mom and dad. In the present world, there are 3 sons. One of them is high in the sky, another is in the golden royal palace of Lotus. The last one is now in front of the Archduke. This is the son of Lotus, King Raupeltan. The brunette kneels and says Cassius Ardan, saluting His Highness, the son of the Kingdom of Lotus. The king states that it's so hard for him to meet his nephew just once. He heard Cassius was at Bess Academy before he came to the palace. His Highness asks why the lad is so late and states that they seem to get along well. The Archduke is silent and afterwards says that everything was delayed because the other day he was there checking relics of interest to the king. He apologizes for waiting so long. His Highness asks what the results are, and Cassius states that after checking it, he didn't find anything special. The blonde asks if this is true and says he thought there would be some news in the report. He states that he has suspicions that the something in the demon ruins is the star of Tyrion's prophecy. Hart says that only an ancient dagger was found, and that the shards around the meteorite are set up like tombstone inscriptions in an ancient language. His Highness asks what it says, but all he hears in reply is that archaeologists are currently investigating the matter. According to the professor, it is an ordinary meteorite that fell on a tombstone in the ruins, so it is best not to expect anything special. The brunette realizes that sooner or later they will still find out about the child with magical skills, but for now it's better not to talk about it. Raupeltan asks if that means that meteorite isn't a prophecy star, and Cassian replies that it's correct. Looking at his face, it's hard for His Highness to understand what's on the brunette's mind. He doesn't like the whole thing. The king says the guy must be exhausted after the long journey, apologizes for calling for negotiations right away. He says that people finding out he's in his 80s comes as a shock, but even imprisoned his body with magic, the time he's lived won't go anywhere and his mind won't change. Raupeltan asks how about having lunch together, since it's been so long since they've seen each other. The Archduke rises and says that he appreciates His Highness's concern, but he has to refuse because he has to go to the mansion. The blonde says that he is always busy with his work, but he needs to give himself a rest. But the brunette says he can't because there is a flood on the grounds and he needs to check. The guy apologizes to the king, and the king thinks he can tell by the look on his face that he's not sorry at all. Raupeltan says that in that case, they'll see each other next time, and tells the Archduke to bring Bess and his 3 sons with him. Meanwhile, at the academy, Rose holds the baby in her arms and cries out that they are on vacation and Letitia will be alone there for 2 whole weeks. Bess claims that she's been talking about it all day. The girl says that she's worried, since the little girl is just a baby. The protagonist realizes that she is embarrassing everyone. Rose goes abroad for 2 weeks, Gregory is busy moving, the lady with green hair does not work out. Everyone has their reasons, and in the end, there is no one to take care of Letitia. Then the blonde claims she'll be with the lab all vacation, and the scientists can go on vacation and not worry. The girl says that the professor hasn't been back to the mansion in a while after all, and her kids miss her. The guy in the back has heard all this. He raises his hand and offers to entrust the little girl to him, because he wasn't going anywhere, as his parents are all on vacation. The woman asks if he ever raised a child, but he hears back that he never did. However, he did take care of his nephew a couple times. Bess says she has little faith, but the boy claims that they will get along, fly, and she can rely on him. Babe thinks it will be bad if Bess can't go home because of her, so she grabs Lone by the sleeve and tells him she'll be with him. Blondie asks if everything will be okay, and the protagonist says she likes Lone and Bess needs to see her real family. Babe says, even though she wants to be with a woman every day, but her real family misses her, so she needs to visit them and not worry about her. The scientists hug the baby girl and say they have an agreement. After that, they hug Lone as well. Rose and Gregory say that even though they don't trust the guy, it is many times better than the babe being alone. The girl asks if the guy has a maid, and the guy says she's enough for normal domestic life. The scientists rejoice and say that this is wonderful, because then the baby is safe. Their Letitia has all rare blonde hair, and who could not like that? Bess says she doesn't know what the guys are happy about, but she will be back soon. The blonde asks if the baby girl will get along with Lorien. The protagonist replies that she will and everything will be fine. But that same evening, the young lady sits by the window, tears rolling down her face. The little girl does not understand when Lone will come. In the afternoon, A guy with a pile of luggage asks if Letitia will wait a minute because he has too much stuff, so it will take a while to move it. And since they have to go down the ridge, it would be better to carry the luggage first and then go down with the baby in his arms. The girl asks if the brunette will be back soon, and he smiles and says that of course, and Letitia will be back before they know it. But now it is dark outside. The protagonist in her thoughts curses Lone because he said that he would return quickly, but it is a complete lie. The young lady remembers how she was in the cave and tries to convince herself otherwise. Suddenly, someone calls out to her from the hallway. Letitia rises and heads there, for she thinks it is Lone. But she sees a completely different man and realizes it is not Lone. The stranger says that Lorien is busy, so he asked him to escort the little girl, or rather he is a close friend of Lorien. The protagonist realizes that it's all a lie. The girl has a premonition that that man will hit or finish her off and thinks she should run, because if she goes out, it will all be over. But when Letitia takes a couple steps back, she steps on her dress and falls. A man hears this sound and swings the door open. The main character is very frightened. She realizes that she has been caught after all. The girl runs away with all her legs and thinks how she would like to kick this stranger off her leg. When the man tries to catch her, the little girl turns around and kicks him between the legs. The stranger squirms in pain. The young lady tries to run away, but the man holds her by her dress. He lifts the little girl up in the air and asks, "What is this 5-year-old child born from a real egg?" But at the same minute, gets punched in the face. The stranger tells that one to stop. He raises his hand and asks why the girl is making him angry. The man says the girl will only faint. The protagonist begs for someone to save her. At the same minute, the Archduke grabs the stranger's hand and asks what he is doing, since the academy is on vacation. The man says that is correct, and he is studying there. He saw some kid trying to steal important data. Cassius asks with a serious face if the academy teaches them to slap children when they misbehave, because if so, they should close the school. The brunette says that the stranger will be expelled anyway, but there will still be a problem for the academy. The Archduke asks what the name of the professor who is teaching him is. The man lets the girl out of his arms, and she immediately runs away, and the stranger swears at her. But the brunette asks whether now he has to think about it, and claims that he will have to take the boy to the professor immediately. The little girl hides behind a couch in some room. Suddenly, Lone comes in. Letitia tearfully asks where he has been and why he only came now. The brunette apologizes and states that he had to go back and forth twice because of the large luggage. He hurried back, but the babe was not there. The guy holds out his hand and offers her to leave, but she claims she didn't say where she went and asks how Lone knew where she was. It's like he's been following her. The guy looks at her with a cold stare, but in a second he smiles and asks what she's talking about because he knows where he can go, fly. The protagonist, on the other hand, claims that she is there for the first time and it is dangerous outside, so she refuses to go out. The guy is furious, telling the little girl not to cause trouble and asks if she is going to come out. He grabs Letitia's hand and cries out that you can go crazy. He is sure that the baby hatched from the egg is special. The protagonist is in pain and scared. The brunette drags her and says they will go out through an underground passage. That way no one will see them. The young lady is scared because she doesn't want to be in darkness again, like in her past life. Suddenly, someone orders to let the little girl go. When the guy turns around, he sees the professor. He is puzzled and says that he had thoughts about it when he saw the Archduke, but didn't think the woman would really come. The blonde asks if Lone thought his actions would go unnoticed. The protagonist's eyes swim. She thinks about Bess for the last time and then faints. The girl wakes up already in a soft bed. She does not understand how she got there. Bess approaches Letty. The woman asks if she has regained consciousness and if anything hurts. The young lady claims to be perfectly fine and apologizes, as the woman shouldn't have carried her through there. The blonde woman asks what happened and says she is fine, for there. But the little girl interrupts her and states that Bess should go back to her real family, even though she was scared. She's fine now. The woman says, "Fly, don't worry, for that's where their home is." She wanted to show it to the little girl one day. Bess argues that she can always meet her real family, but Letty can't. Tears flow down her cheeks, and the blonde states that the little girl is very important to her too. The Archduke stands outside the door and sighs, hearing all of this. The woman says that in that case, since they are a real family, will the little girl tell me what is bothering her? The main character, all in tears, says she was very scared and sad without Bess. It was too dark and cold. The blonde hugs the girl and says she understood. She thanks the little girl for telling her. The protagonist asks if the woman will be with her, and the woman replies that of course, and she won't leave Letitia alone on a cold night there in their house. The little girl then asks if the Archduke is also there. Bess says that he is also at the manor. The little girl says that she should thank him because the man saved her and she should thank him. The woman then suggests that they go to see him together. But when they arrive at the hall, they see a boy lying on the floor, shouting that today is his birthday. He asks why there is no puppy and claims that he misses his brother. The protagonist realizes that being a family is hard. The blonde walks over to the boy and lifts him up in her arms. She asks why Kyle is so upset, but the guy just says to send the girl back because he hates her. The blonde asks Togo not to say that. The Archduke comes up behind him and tells Kyle to stop, but the boy just points at the girl and yells that it's not his gift. Cassius says that is self-evident, as this child is not his gift. The boy says that today is his holiday and asks why no one is interested in him. Bess hugs him and apologizes, for it is his birthday and his mother is late, but she says she has a big responsibility. The son asks, didn't she tell him she wouldn't bring the kids over to show off their possessions? The blonde puts Kyle on the floor and claims that he hasn't told his mom yet about his powers that were awakened in him today and asks if he wants to show off. The boy puts his hand in front of him and a bright flame erupts on it. Bess is amazed, and the main character approaches the boy and asks how he made fire on his palms. Because it's amazing. Kyle is a little embarrassed and states that he just did. The protagonist is surprised. Summer this time, the fire is blue in color. The boy asks what ability the little girl has, but the girl says she has no ability. Then the boy puts his hands behind his back and says it looks like the girl has no magical powers. He claims that if that's the case, she wouldn't be able to make a light like his. Bess says that not everyone has magical powers and asks if she didn't tell her son that the other day. Only a select few are born that way. It is a blessing to a person, but sometimes it becomes poison to them. On top of that, comparing yourself to others is bad. Kyle says he understands, and afterward asks his brother if it's only true that it can't be done without magic. He says yes. He then approaches the little girl and says that they haven't introduced themselves to each other yet, so he wants to do it first. He greets the babe and says his name is Dmitri Ardan. The guy asks what the babe's name is, and the babe says her name. Dmitri asks his mom if Letitia will now live with them and stay for more than a few days, but Kyle cries out that he's against it. The blonde argues that she probably will. The older brother says he doesn't dare oppose mom and dad's decision. He's even glad they have a baby sister since he only has 2 younger brothers, so he's very happy. Dmitri asks if he'll get along with Letitia, and the latter confirms that he will. The protagonist thinks he's older than she is, and she doesn't even know how to show deference. The boy tells her to say that she is interested in learning because he likes to teach other people and he is good at it, because he is a good student himself. Kyle can't take it anymore. He yells furiously that he is not welcome there. The boy leaves and says he hates his brother and mom and dad too. The protagonist is a bit wilted, for she thinks the boy is having a hard time and he really doesn't like her. The Archduke puts his hand on her head and strokes the little girl. He states that this child is always jealous at first. He may be rude now, but he's not a bad person, and they will definitely get along. Bess says that if Letty doesn't want to, who can say no, and it doesn't matter if they or that kid is comfortable, but Pity can take her anywhere she wants at any time. But the little girl says no, for she likes Bess, and the Archduke is nice too. The girl thinks that even in this fake family, warm relations are very nice. She has been with them for a long time and is used to it, but now she only longs more for a real family. although she realizes that she wants a lot. Letitia thinks that before she gets attached to them, she should leave this place before it's too late. The little girl clenches her fists and thinks how hard this is all. After that, they say their goodbyes. The protagonist is greeted by her personal maid, Helen. Bess says that she will be taking care of Letitia from today. After they leave, the blonde says that she wants to dye the girl's hair, but she can't decide on the choice and wonders if red will be the right color. The Archduke asks if that's all her wife is worried about. Bess says she's also worried about whether the young lady will be able to take root in their mansion But Dmitri doesn't let his mom finish and says he's going to go comfort Kyle. The woman hugs her son and says he's helping out as always. The boy says he is not to be thanked since Kyle is his little brother. The blonde suggests that her husband put a restraining magic spell on Letitia until her power stabilizes. They don't know how strong the girl's magic is, and it would be best if no one found out. Cassius asks if his wife wants the baby girl to not stand out at all. Bess says she does, at least until she grows up. The main thing is to remember to color her hair. The brunette says that even though his wife is being so cautious, but one day there will come a day when the emperor will want to see her. The woman understands this as well as anyone, since they have so suddenly decided to adopt a child. The Archduke strokes his wife's cheek and offers to make up a story about Letitia. Even if he becomes more majestic than the king himself, he doesn't mind having a secret behind his back. Bess thanks her husband. The protagonist, on the other hand, is shown her own bath. The little girl is shocked, as expected of an Archduke. She wonders if she will have it all if she becomes as distinguished. The maid says that by order of Mrs. Bess, the little girl will have her hair dyed today and asks if everything is all right. The protagonist, on the other hand, wonders if they'll do it because she looks like Bess's own daughter. The woman scatters petals in the bathtub and says how glad she is that this dye is not harmful to Letitia, and soon she will get used to it, as they will do it often. The young lady climbs into the tub. She is so warm and drawn to sleep. The maid claims she hasn't seen hair like this in a long time. The last time was when she was 8 years old, and enough time has passed. Now this color has remained in the history of the royal family. The protagonist says that if it happened when Helen was 8 LOL, then this story is very old. The woman smiles and says that is correct. She says that she was so excited and completely lost her mind. The maid says that the Archduchess will tell the little girl all about it later, and such a little girl needs to grow up safe there. The main character thinks about the royal family in the story and wonders if that's why they decided to dye their hair. The young lady doesn't know anything about herself. Perhaps Bess knows more than she does, and Archduke Cassius knows too, and even that kidnapper. Letitia would like to hear an answer from someone. The girl with her hair fully colored falls asleep, while the maid thinks how cute she is. In her dream, a voice speaks to the little girl and tells her that she is a star, a lost ray of light. The young lady is shocked and asks who it is. The unfamiliar girl claims that she saved the little girl so that she could save countless souls. But the little girl's body is not yet ready to accommodate the immensity of souls. Thanks to this, she was able to escape the darkness. If the little girl encounters it, she will not be consumed. The protagonist realizes that this is her chance to learn something. She says that she has definitely fallen into eternal sleep and asks how she then found herself in the body of a child. The unfamiliar voice states that the little girl has to remember herself. She sends her a blob of energy and says that she is sorry because it is all she can do for the young lady. But the more she tries to learn the truth, the clearer it will become. For what she was reborn, and everything will fall into place. But it is still early. The main heroine should not hurry, but on the contrary, move gradually and then protect from darkness small defenseless souls. The little girl asks if she can, and the stranger says that she is sure. The girl kisses the young lady on the forehead and says that even if the girl falls into despair, hope will make her move on. Even if loved ones are far away, she will protect them because she is a special child. What the stranger gave to the little girl is a shield hiding her and will be her weapon. The last word the protagonist can no longer hear because her consciousness is getting cloudy. At this time, the Archduke asks his servant if he has checked, The man dressed in black replies that he has. Cassius asks who else is involved in this case besides Count Cheston. The servant says it's unknown. The Count was so blinded by power that he sold his own daughter and hung around the Archduke to get attention, but he couldn't get close. So he introduced a spy into the academy, targeting Bess. After the spy received information about finding an egg from a fallen meteor for bargaining purposes, he briefly reported to the Count that there was a child at the academy. The Count wants to find out what kind of relationship Bess has with the girl, and that night they built a kidnapping. Cassius asks what's up with the ringleaders. The servant states that the demise of the Count and the spy are given away under the guise of accidents. After that night, they won't show their faces again, thanks to His Excellency. The Archduke claims they reeked of drugs, so he doesn't even feel sorry for them. Cassius says there shouldn't be a trace of them left alive. The servant agrees and says they will send shadows. The brunette enters the room where Letitia lies. The girl is sound asleep. Bess states that the little girl has been sleeping all day and asks if she is all right. The Archduke says the doctor said the girl is exhausted and needs rest, so she'll be fine. But the woman is still nervous, and her husband claims that at such an age with a sudden change of environment, one is often nervous and asks his wife not to worry, because the baby will soon open her eyes. He thinks that after all, in magic, hair color is very suspicious, and understands why Bess is worried. He will have to wait and find out later if Letitia is really the child from the prophecy. A maid comes into the room and informs the mistress that something has happened at the academy. Cassius tells his wife to go and he will look after Letitia. The Archduke looks at the little girl. After a little while, the protagonist wakes up and cries out, and when she sees Cassius's face in front of her, she screams in horror to the whole room. The man notices that the one is frightened and claims that the one was sleeping so restlessly, that's why she was holding his hand. The little girl wonders if she's lost her mind and apologizes, but the brunette tells her that she shouldn't apologize every time and says that Bess will be here soon. Then he points to the protagonist's hand and asks what she's holding there. The girl opens her hand and sees there the same blob of energy that turned into a crystal. She tosses it in the air and says they stole nothing. The Archduke tells the little girl to show it to him. He looks at the pink stone and asks where she got it, as it is the stone of control. The young lady claims that she really didn't take any and says that a woman gave it to her in a dream. The Archduke doesn't believe it at first and then tells the girl to wait. He'll check something and return the stone. But as he heads for the door, it swings open and Kyle shrieks you. Dmitri comes out from behind him and pats his little brother on the head. He claims the girl has a name, but the boy shrieks furiously that he would never call the baby girl Letitia. The protagonist in her thoughts tells the man not to worry because she doesn't really want the baby to call her that. The older brother comes into the room and asks Letitia if he can come in. The young lady says that yes, and realizes that it's started again. The Archduke stands while Kyle cries out that those cookies belong to him, and his older brother says he just ate 3. Cassius comes to the door and tells the boys to have fun until tonight, and Dmitri says goodbye to his father and says they'll see each other at dinner. Kyle shrieks that he's just going to eat all the cookies. He's already pulling the sweetness to his mouth, and the young lady claims that he can eat them then, and she won't. The boy is shocked. He certainly didn't expect this. The main character holds a cookie in her hands and tells Dmitri that if they are his, then the girl will not. In her mind, she asks if they can't just give the snacks to her because they are so necessary at that age, and the little girl won't even have a whole cellar full of them. Kyle, on the other hand, is completely confused and furiously yells that he hates Letitia. At dinner, he sits with a disgruntled face and looks at Letitia. Bess asks what happened to Kyle's face, and Dmitri tells his mom to just ignore it, and his little brother says he hates the girl. Dmitri states that everyone but Kyle is overjoyed. Fly, and the man cringes. The Archduke tells his son not to talk during meals. The boy jumps up from his chair. He points his finger at the protagonist and yells that she has no magical abilities, and if she doesn't belong to the Keek family. Bess asks if she doesn't belong in that case either, and the boy is puzzled to say that mom isn't like that. The protagonist wants to say something but accidentally knocks over a glass. The little boy sitting beside her picks it up and happily says, "Bust." Bess says that Raleigh seems to like Letty too. Kyle runs away from the table and yells that he hates everyone. The woman says the man ran away again. The main character gets up from her chair and the blonde asks where she is going. The young lady says with a smile on her face that she is going to Kyle's house. Dimitri says that this kid has always been like this, and Letty shouldn't pay attention because maybe he'll be back soon. But the protagonist says she'll go anyway, since they get along well with each other. When she finds the boy, who sees that he is all crying, the girl calls his name. But Kyle cries out what she wants and why she came. He yells that he hates the girl and tells her to leave. The main character tells him that when alone, you feel unwanted. She sits down next to the boy and says that she is not going to take away the cookies or his precious family because it's not hers, and she was only taken in out of pity. The girl claims that she lives there but is not a member of their family like Helen and the rest of the workers on the estate. Kyle turns around and asks if the little girl is really not going to take it all away from him. The young lady replies yes, for she has no right to. Letitia says that Bess and Archduke Cassius care so much for Kyle and asks if they don't love him much. The brunette says that's a given since they are his mom and dad. The young lady realizes that family is not an easy relationship to get whenever you want it. She states that she also wants to be friends with Kyle. The boy asks why, and the protagonist states that Bess and Dimitri are worried. Kyle looks at her with an incredulous look, but still says he'll give the little girl a chance. The protagonist gets uneasy in her heart. Barry asks if she will do something, because if she does, she will become his 1,203rd friend. Letitia doesn't know what he means, but says she'll try. After all this, they approach the table. Bess asks if they had a good chat, and Kyle points to the young lady and states that she has something to say. The woman with a smile on her face asks what. Letty had something to say. The main character barely gets over herself and says she wants a puppy. Everyone immediately realizes that she was forced to say this, and Kyle almost glows with joy. His mother turns to him and says that she told the boy not to take everything so lightly. The same doesn't understand why his mother is saying this to him and not Letitia, and asks about it. But Bess says that the same applies to coercion. The young lady didn't think it would be like this. The blonde says that first of all, it's about responsibility, and the boy should take responsibility and not fool around, because trying to achieve something at the expense of others is wrong. After such an act, it would be hard for his mom to expect anything good from him. The boy looks at Letitia with puppy dog eyes as if he's getting tired of helping her, but the girl looks away in the other direction. Kyle is shocked by this and yells that he hates her. After dinner, Dimitri goes into the library. He is looking for some book, and after a little while, he finds it. This book is about Tyrion. Bess goes into the library and looks for Dimitri. She sees him around the corner with a book in his hands. The boy asks if his mother was looking for him and apologizes, as he didn't hear as he was engrossed in reading. The blonde woman claims he is fine and asks what he is reading, but sees the cover of the book and realizes it is the story of Tyrion. The woman asks if his son is bothered by this little girl's hair. Dimitri says yes. Bess only breathes a sigh of relief that Kyle is interested in Letitia, but her oldest son is savvy. The kid claims that the girl has a rare hair color and it might have something to do with his mom, so he decides to find out more. Dimitri asks if this child came there for a reason. The woman claims that she brought the girl to their mansion without saying anything, so she's sorry. The guy says there's no need to apologize since it's his parents' decision. The blonde apologizes again. She says that despite that, Kyle treated the baby girl neglectfully. Bess says that neither she nor Letitia had any other choice. Guy flips another page of the book and says he believes his mom. He claims that if another girl shows up at the estate, nothing will change. Blondie doesn't seem to think her son cares if Letitia is good or bad. He's rarely unhappy about anything. The woman has 3 sons, and they are all completely different. Dimitri is special. He is the first son of the Ardan family. From the moment the boy spoke, he could already form sentences at a high level. And after about a year, he began to fully control the magic that had awakened at the age of 5. The family was very surprised, as it usually takes about 10 years. Earlier admission to the academy, also the first place among the first-year students. At the age of 10, the boy was given the title of genius. Dmitri Ardan is worthy of such honors, but the woman noticed that her child almost never smiles. A child who understands the structure of the world, such trifles are not particularly interested in such trifles. If you look closely, then for bored Dmitri, it was as if the world was divided into 3 parts: knowledge of position, wealth, power, ability, and interpersonal relationships. The person he wanted to be like, people like him, and people younger. The boy had respect for those he wants to look up to, care and empathy for the younger ones. His family was no exception. Bess realizes that her first child is as calculating as herself, but the woman is worried. Dmitri asks if something is wrong, and the blonde claims nothing is wrong. She turns to her son and claims that he can be sincere with his family. Bess also asks what feelings he is having right now. The boy states that he has one feeling. He brings up Letitia and says that she is amazing because usually kids younger than him are very fond of cookies. But the other day when Guy gave one to her, the young lady refused. She is shorter than Kyle by half a head, so Dmitri is surprised because this is the first time a kid younger than him has made concessions. It seems to Dmitri that this little girl is trying very hard for Kyle, him and others in the family to like her. Kids don't do this kind of thing at the age of 5, and the little girl also looks like a peach. The kid asks his mom if all girls are like that. He's not sure since he hasn't been paying attention, but he's a little curious. The mother approaches her son and asks if Letitia, who looks like a peach, doesn't look beautiful, and suggests her son ask Letitia why she is so cute. The boy looks at my mom and states that he will think about it, but asking such a thing out of the blue would look very strange. Bess thinks how shy her son is. She hugs Dmitri, and in her thoughts asks why all the men in this house don't realize her feelings. The protagonist is sitting on her bed at the time. The maid asks if the little girl is anxious at night and asks her to be patient for a little while. She says that it is necessary to sleep because children have a certain sleep schedule and tells the little girl to sleep properly. The woman then leaves the room with a candle and the young lady is left alone in the dark. Letitia thinks that if she closes her eyes and counts the sheep, who will fall asleep, but it does not help because the girl slept until noon. She woke up from the noise but thinks whether it seemed to her, the little girl wants someone to be near her because she cannot fall asleep alone just like a child. But it's quite late in the day to call for someone. The protagonist thinks that it won't be a big deal if she calls Helen because the woman is her nanny, and it's normal for a 5-year-old child to be afraid to sleep alone at night. Letitia decides to call someone first, but she hears someone talking. It's the maids, one of them asking if her friend heard what Mark said. The other asks what she's talking about, and the girl claims she's talking about the little girl because as tumbleweeds move from place to place, change everyone around. Not even young Mr. Kyler was crying or screaming today. One of the maids asks the other if she saw her master's face, for when the young master cried, he immediately began to soothe him, though he usually never did so. The other maid says that Mark has a habit of talking out of turn, and her friend had better not listen to him. But the girl claims that it is true. She has seen a child of unknown origin and asks if her friend thinks that the girl is the mistress's illegitimate daughter born on the street. But the other maid cries out for her to watch her tongue and think what she says. The girl asks if she said something wrong. After all, it's Mark's theory, and you never know what to expect from people. The maid says that often, such uninvited guests try their best to stay comfortable. The little girl lies back down on the bed. She hears the maids leave and thinks it's okay after all. She's not a child and it's just one night. But no matter how hard the girl tries to sleep, she can't. Suddenly, she feels something strange coming towards her hand. She thinks that she can't fall asleep on her own after all, because that way the darkness will consume her and decides to go out. Letitia decides to look out the window. She goes out into the hallway and looks at this very window. The protagonist runs to it. When she is near it, she turns around and makes sure that there is no one behind her. The little girl climbs on the dresser and looks out the window. She remembers the song she used to sing to the sound of the music box before going to bed. To the rhythm of the tinkling melodious song, words came to mind randomly, and this melody soothed her in the dark. The girl begins to sing the song near the window. She sang about being in the same place in the evening. The darkness will disperse, and then the light will find them. The sun will embrace them. The moonlight will comfort them. They have nothing to fear. The young lady did not remember well, but when she began to sing, she remembered everything at once. Dmitri was walking down the corridor behind her. He noticed Letitia and asked what she was doing there. The little girl turned around. She didn't expect anyone to be passing through there at such a late hour. The boy asks if she was sitting there for fear of the dark, and the protagonist agrees. She states that with a new again ghost approaching. The girl sees a book in Dmitri's hands and asks if he has been to the library. The boy claims that he was because he needed to find out about something. He also tells Letitia that she shouldn't wander around the estate so late because she might get lost, and suggests that she come back. The protagonist doesn't really rush to do that, and Dmitri asks if she wants to go back to her room. The young lady wonders if she's making a nuisance of herself and claims she can go there alone, but the guy says he'll take her because you shouldn't go to Ardan Manor alone. He helps Letitia down and claims that the house is haunted, and many people have said they've seen a ghost. Even the noxious Kyler doesn't wander there at night. The protagonist is startled by his smile at the situation and asks if Dmitri is afraid of ghosts. The guy claims that he's not afraid because ghosts can't hurt them and people are much scarier. Dmitri asks if the little girl doesn't mind if he stays with her until she falls asleep, because he was just looking for a place to read books. The young lady says with a bright smile on her face that she doesn't mind. When she climbs into bed, she thinks that Dmitri is a good student, so he likes books. The guy with a smile on his face says he loves books. The protagonist is shocked and asks if Dmitri can read minds and if it's his magic. The boy only laughs and states that it is not. Then Letitia asks how he knows what she is thinking. The boy asks how such a thing could not be understood with the look on her face. The young lady wonders what kind of magic Dmitri has then, and the man says that she will see someday. He then asks why the little girl keeps calling him Dmitri. The little girl asks if she should call him Junior Ardan, but the guy says no, they are the Ardan family. Cassius Ardan, Bess Ardan, Dmitri Ardan, Kyle Ardan, Raleigh Ardan, and Letitia Ethy will soon be part of their family too. The guy suggests she call him by another name, then the little girl calls him brother. Dmitri smiles and says that he wants her to call him only that from now on, because it is much nicer. The boy says that it is very late and claims that he will stay there until Letitia falls asleep. The little girl falls asleep shortly after these words. She thinks that being with someone in pitch darkness feels different, even though the boy is a child. But that night, the girl heard only Dmitri's calm breathing and the sound of pages being turned by him. The young man became her savior. In the morning, the maid comes to the protagonist and says that it's time for the little girl to get up. The young lady also wishes her a good morning. The young lady looks at the chair and sees a hairpin. She wonders if it is a dream. Helen braids the little girl and tells her she can go to breakfast. The main character runs in with the hairpin. She opens the door and greets the Archduke, lifting her dress like a lady. Afterwards, the little girl approaches Dmitri and calls him brother. The guy smiles and wishes Letitia a good morning too. Kyle, on the other hand, is shocked. A guy with silver hair sits at a long table and asks why the Archduchess came to see them. Bess says she came with a request for His Holiness. The fallen star continues to sparkle. The light hasn't gone anywhere, and to shine it must be rekindled. Its glow will be in Lotus as well. One of them jumps up from the table and says that it is clear that the Archduchess is talking about the child from the prophecy. After 52 years, it is time to bury the papal commission and restore the fallen priesthood. Another priest claims that a rumor was spread the other day that nothing has been found at the site of the fallen meteorite. The man with silver hair claims that he sent a false seer to the emperor, and there will be no problem with that, but if he doesn't believe it, then they may have missed a chance for the first time in 52 years. He asks God to help him not to arouse suspicion. When the blonde comes in, the guy asks if she has come in person to see the Holy Father. The herald tells her not to stall and to tell him what's wrong. Bess, with a serious expression on her face, asks the guy to look after her children. Everyone is shocked by such a request, and the woman realizes that it's a good thing she went instead of Cassius. Bess opens the suitcase in her hands, and everyone sees the shell of an egg. The woman states that it must be, and she was let in because of her hair color, even though she belongs to the Ardan family. She tells His Holiness that from now on, she will again do research on the cause of Tyrion's attack, but they are very much in need of the Holy Throne's help. The herald doesn't know what to say to that. He asks if the purpose of the research is this child of prophecy. The blonde says yes, then the guy asks where it is now, and Bess says the girl is now at Ardan Manor. Everyone is shocked. One of the people at the table cries out, "Doesn't the woman know that her husband is a loyal subject and nephew of the king?" She remembers telling Cassius that they would cheat them, if they were lucky. At best, they could get a contract with them, and she is very worried about her husband. Brunette says he knows, but if they don't, the church won't cooperate with them. He hugs his wife and says it's okay, because if he was worried about it, he wouldn't be able to rise to his current status. The blonde now says that Cassius is not the king's nephew, but his only true son. Meanwhile, at the manor, the Archduke asks who called Letitia a tumbleweed. The little girl is very worried and can't answer, and Brad turns around and asks if that asshole Kyle did it. The main character cries out that it's not like that. Helen says that my lady is very surprised because it seems the average maid has those who have maligned and teased her. The maid says she will find out who it was and punish them. She hugs the girl and tells the Lord that things are different now, and she will protect my lady from such people. Cassius remembers the rumors about him as a child and how badly he was treated. He turns around and walks out of the room. The little girl looks after him, and Helen claims that his lordship is just a little upset because he regrets that bad things were said about the little girl. The protagonist thinks it's not true, but the maid confidently says it is. The little girl wonders if everyone in this place has the ability to read minds. Helen rests her forehead against hers and says that such a little girl is a gift to the Ardan family and that she will keep her safe to prevent others from treating my lady that way in the future. The maid says that she and the Archduke are sure they don't need such people on the estate. Afterward, she suggests that the little girl go get some cookies. Meanwhile, in the church, the herald asks why the king told me about this before. Bess says that the monarch probably wants a loyal dog who will do anything, not someone who will love and follow in his footsteps afterward. Of course, this is only a suggestion. The Holy Father says to send the child of prophecy to the Holy See, and he will listen to the request. But the woman argues that the child cannot stay there, for the Holy Throne has no powers for protection. She asks them that this will be their backup hiding place if something goes wrong and they have revealed the secret, to unite with them, for it is very important. The blonde says they hope to cooperate. The herald ponders all this, and someone from the table cries out that they can get their power back, for this is the most common change of power. If a statement is made from Cassius Ardan's next successor and the family turns their backs on him, the reputation of the Holy See will not suffer.